We hope that these sessions will provide insight on leadership skills that will impact how we treat our patients and our colleagues, how we cultivate our careers in emergency medicine, and how we honor our authentic selves during this process. Today, our inaugural speaker is Dr. James Pruden. There will be a question and answer session after the talk, so please feel free to enter your questions in the chat box. Dr. James Pruden has practiced emergency medicine at St. Joe's University since 1982, after completing his medical education and residency at Howard University in Washington, D.C. During his time at St. Joe's, he served as medical director and became the first emergency department chairman in 2000. Dr. Pruden was also elected president of the hospital medical staff twice and was the first physician named Employee of the Year for this 5,000 employee facility. In addition, Dr. Pruden supervised as Director of Preparedness for St. Joe's Healthcare System for over 20 years. His passion for emergency medicine services has been shown in his roles as Chairman for the New Jersey Emergency Medicine Service Council, Chairman of the New Jersey Mobile ICU Medical Advisory Board, and participation in virtually all New Jersey statewide emergency preparedness activities. Dr. Pruden is a member of many statewide organizations and has received numerous honors and awards, including the Kendrick Lance Distinguished Physician Award, the Key to the City of the Paterson, New Jersey, the New Jersey-ACEP EMS Physician Award, and the New Jersey Healthcare Heroes Physician of the Year Award in 2018. Some fun facts that Dr. Pruden wanted to share with you all include that he performed a stand-up comedy routine at a New York City comedy club. And I'm from New York, so I know that's a hard thing to do. He also flew a Black Hawk helicopter twice with USAR training. He wore an actual Miss America crown in Atlantic City, and most recently was on 60 Minutes because he survived COVID-19.
What did your colleagues here learn from treating you?
One of the things I've learned, they learned, is not to give up.
Dr. James Pruden, Director of Emergency Preparedness at St. Joseph's in New Jersey, was released after 33 days. He had to learn to walk again in physical therapy.
It felt like love. You never knew so many people cared. You know what I mean? That it was important to them that you come out. That's what it felt like.
Wow, okay.
Dr. Pruden and others told us the medical community is much better prepared now in case of another surge in the fall.
We're a lot smarter than we were 7 months ago. We are still not out of the woods.
As a physician and as a patient, what do you say to your medical colleagues about this going forward?
What I say to the medical colleagues is learn resilience, maintain physical strength and your cognition. Think, problem solve. It's not woe is me, but okay, how can I do it better the next time? And we can do it. There's strength in this community. There's strength in the world around us. Look at that strength and build on it.
So for a man who needs no further introduction, I present to you Dr. James Pruden.
Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank New Jersey-ACEP for the privilege of opening this lecture series. I've spoken to some of those that organize this program, and I think you and I will be well served to free up the time to participate. When I asked them the purpose of the lecture series, they said it was to provide guidance on how you treat your patients, how you treat your colleagues, how you lead, and how you live your lives. The goals are significant and their strategy is sound, so I think we should participate. Warning, my purpose is not to offend you, because as ED physicians, I figure you can handle pretty much anything. But if I inadvertently offend you, please forgive me if I'm wrong about that. And this is a test slide to see if you're really paying attention. This is an old picture of me. So it's an opportunity to reiterate the previous slide. So what is it like working in the ED? Well, I don't have to tell you, but a friend of mine, Julie, a colleague, in fact, said, one of her friends came up to her and said, well, what is it like to work in the ED? And Julie said, well, it's like a carousel. And before she could finish, her friend said, oh, so it's like a merry-go-round. Whereupon Julie said, you didn't let me finish. It's like a carousel on fire. My daughter, who is an emergency physician, PGM doc, tells me that they have a very new name for 2021. They're calling it 2020, the sequel. So my goal today is to share some of the tools I found that have helped me to see each day as an opportunity, as an adventure, as a chance to learn something, as a gift. These are not my tools. They're tools available to everyone. Some I use well, some I'm learning to use, some I'll never be any good at. And most of you already have some of these tools, but by naming them, you might get a better handle on when to reach for them and how to use them. And as a PGY 41, I've had a fair amount of experience. So I'll take this opportunity to highlight those tools that have worked especially well for me. By the way, you know the definition of experience, right? Experience is that which you have right after you needed it. So let's get specific about these goals, my goals for the lecture today. We're going to define the need for resilience. And then they say if you want somebody to change their behavior, you have to give them a cerebral rationale and you have to give them an emotional rationale. Now, you guys are scientists, so I'm going to have to give you some facts, although this is by no means the goal of this lecture. And that self-indulgence philosopher piece, well, I'm a closet philosopher. Now, when I said I'm a closet, I know you were thinking other things, but it's philosopher. I'm a closet philosopher. But as an emergency physician, I don't have the time to read the whole treatise. So I just read the memes, and those that are particularly helpful to me, I sort of will share with you at any point. Be aware that as human beings, we are all flawed, and the author of the quotes may or may not be someone you look up to, but sometimes you can find meaning even from the most obtuse or obscure source. So what is resilience? You can read that as well as I can. It's the ability to withstand and adapt, and more importantly, to spring back, hopefully to at least the same shape you had. Maybe with miracles or good planning, you can spring back to better than you were before the hardship began. I hate to do this to you, Sly, but we have to go through the cerebral rationale for doing this. So this is what we're doing right now. We're talking to you about the negative impact of stress. And specifically with COVID, like with other stresses, especially in emergency medicine, it's absence of resources, vulnerability, and volume. I talked with the doctors who led the physicians, no, the paramedics in Paris when they had that multiple site attack, and they said the paramedics in the field they were doing well until they ran out of resources. So running out of resources is a critical point beyond which you get into trouble. And the ultimate goal at the bottom is to help you guys survive in your chosen profession. So what those paramedics in France experienced and what we experience is something they call moral injury. Now, moral injury, go to the next slide, is when you know inside what the right thing to do is, but because of lack of resources, because of the prevailing circumstances, or because of something else going on, you do not do the right things. And it was originally used for soldiers in combat who witnessed or participated in something that was contrary to their ethics and their core. And of course, soldiers, because it frequently related in death or harm to others. So in our profession, we have death and harm to each other, to others, but we are not causing it usually. So in the pandemic era, there are some of the things that impact and add to the sense of trouble or stress that we experience. The sense of isolation. Tell me about it. Your family experiences that as well. sense of risk. Might you get it? The stigma. Have you walked into a store with your scrubs on lately? Watch how quickly people will move away from you. And that guilt and fear go together. And the sense that it will never end. By the way, do you know what the difference between true love and herpes is? The answer is herpes is forever. Let's go to the next slide. And then what happens with, how do you behave differently? So what does it look like when these things come in? Sometimes you have, sleep disturbances. How many of you have had trouble going to sleep at night? You can see these other things, instability, anger, volatility. You probably don't see it in yourselves, but you certainly see it in others. You get distracted easily. And there's a psych component, the depression, the anxiety, et cetera. Then there's the increased substance use, potential abuse, and the increased interpersonal conflict. Next slide. And how does it come out in you? Well, you can become cynical. You can be depersonalized. Is there anything wrong with depersonalization? And decreased sense of personal accomplishment. Going back to that depersonalization, I had a chance to speak with one of the FBI agents on a SWAT team in Connecticut. FBI SWAT, right? Real macho guy. And he said he and his crew responded to the Newtown, Connecticut shooting. And the doctor on the team was with them. They had a drill that day, so they went down there. The doctor on the team with them, and he had the good or bad fortune to have to pronounce every one of the dead bodies. And this FBI agent was sitting in front of a group of first responders talking about, being cool and maintaining that tactical detachment. And he said 3 years later, he was ready to eat his gun. So that tactical detachment, depersonalization works when you're in the environment, but it doesn't work well when you're sitting at home with family and they're trying to talk with you and you're sitting there tactically detached. So there are also indicators of prolonged duration of stress. Now, if you're experiencing these things or someone close to you is telling you that they are feeling these things, it's time to reach out. ACEP has programs available. There are there are employee assistance programs at many of your facilities. There are many other resources. But in this particular environment, specifically with moral injury, studies show that peer-to-peer discussions are very effective, especially with the moral injury thing, because unlike soldiers, although we're at war, we are not acting with malice aforethought. Okay, so you've probably seen this slide, and I hate to show this slide, but everybody talks about burnout. The reason I hate to show these slides is because, yes, there are real things, but by perpetually showing these things, we get a sense that it's inevitable that it's going to happen. Next slide. This is the last one of those slides I'm going to show you. It talks about how to, this is the National Registry of EMTs. They were talking to them about how do they feel, what are their burdens as a result of working in the field. These guys have been out in the field for at least 5 years, and you see the numbers there. Emotional exhaustion, depersonalization. Some reported a high level of personal accomplishment, but 53% also reported doing the bare minimum to stay on the ambulance. And one of the issues that comes up is you don't know necessarily when you are beginning to manifest some of these things. I remember after 9/11, we spent 10 days down there, and I knew that I had difficulty learning new jokes. I knew that I had trouble handling 2 phone calls at one time, but I didn't know until my wife told me that I was an angrier driver. Sometimes you have to rely on other people to let you know, hey, you're out of sorts. So what is, the next one is how physicians feel before the pandemic and after the pandemic. And this is talking about outside of work. You're outside of work, and yes, yet the pandemic has changed your unhappiness rate from 2% to 6%, and somewhat unhappiness rate from 8 to 21%, and dropped your very happy rate out of work from 43% to 20%. So what is one to do about all of this? Well, one answer is stop looking at the damn slides. No, we don't need to read, unless you're doing a study or something, you don't need to read about burnout. Be in touch with yourself, be in touch with your colleagues. If you see some of these things or you feel some of these things, reach out. But you don't need to read about burnout. After the World Trade Center, one of the things psychologists and psychiatrists said, I was preparing a lecture for disasters in children. And one of the things they said was, avoid showing the videos of the airplanes hitting the towers over and over again. For young children, it's like, oh no, it's happening again, it's happening again. And for adults, it's just re-implanting those scenes. So stop looking at it. Yes, burnout is a real issue, but we don't have to keep reading about it to know that it's a real issue. Pay attention. So now we're going to talk about tools to enhance yourselves, and you can see them. But defining your goal is critical. And it's not the goal of, getting to work and getting through the shift. It's your core value. When you were a little child and someone said to you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you said, I want to be a doctor. You were talking about being helpful. You were talking about being a force for good. Maybe you were talking about making money if you're prescient. And if that's your primary goal, well, more power to you. I hope that is enough to sustain you. But you're talking about wanting to do good for others. So defining your goal, that is your core goal, is to define your goal. And every day you can go back to what your goal is. We're going to talk about basic pH later. We're going to look at these a little bit more deeply. Intention, critical tool. Forgiveness is the other side of judgment. And we'll talk a little bit about that forgiveness piece. Reframing, you spend your life reframing. Detachment, critical tool as well. Ritual, gratitude. We're going to break these things down a little bit later. Scheduling downtime, love, humor, and so got pot. That's another one we'll break down a little later. But let's go to scheduled downtime. What do you do with that downtime? When my first wife died, I was not eager to go home. So I'd sit in the office and journal. I journal about the good cases, the bad cases, and I tried to extract meaning out of that day. And it helped me to pick out the good teaching points of the day. They say there's no such thing as a bad experience. There are experiences that you enjoy, or there's an experience that you learn from. And so I would take journaling as an opportunity to do that. At times, it was almost like a ritual. It's almost like a transition ritual. And sometimes you can use the tools in combination. Meditation, silence, self-talk. I tried meditation. In fact, I did some Zen meditation for about 7 years, but I gave it up when I realized I'm never going to be able to levitate. Next slide. Now, there are some very specific incidents that we know will create an issue. They're called critical incidents. And they're things like a child death. That's going to be a problem. Mass casualties, death of a colleague. These are high producers of stress. And they talk about, as soon as possible, employ downtime for an event like this. Better done before you go home. And it's less than 30 minutes is about the right downtime, but a chance to talk to your colleagues, a chance to go over what went on so you don't have to carry that burden home and maybe hold it close while you're trying to deal with what is happening in your real life. Next slide. Self-talk. What would you say to a friend? Is it realistic? If you're down on yourself, consider this self-talk strategy. What would you say to a friend who is doing the same thing that you're doing when you're beating yourself up? Is what you're beating yourself up about realistic? What was your knowledge base at the time? Did that influence how you behaved, and would you behave differently with a new knowledge base? And the answer is probably yes. So this is a way to get through some of those hard times. So got pot, you guys, I don't know what you're thinking. What I meant was shit or get off the pot. Now, my new wife will tell you that this is one strategy that I have not yet learned effectively, but I'm working on it. But the shit or get off the pot is decide, act. Something you have to do. Procrastination is a time robber. If you think about it today, then think about it tomorrow, and think about it the next day. If you'd done it that first day, you could free up some of your mind and your space and your energy, getting rid of this thing that is a problem. And in fact, in a New York supplement on New York Times supplement on happiness, it says, do this thing quickly, especially if it is distasteful, because it's going to eat at you until you get it done. Or as Shakespeare said in Macbeth, if it be done, best be done quickly. Okay, now, I love this side. You don't drown by falling in the river, you drown by staying there. Will Rogers said, if you find yourself in a rut, stop digging. The eagle said, we are all prisoners of our own device. If you are in a place that is not working for you, don't wallow in it. Get out of that place. So there are the tools to eliminate resilience in others. And you notice they're pretty much like the tools to enhance resilience in others are like the tools you use to enhance resilience in yourself. Empathy, which is a form of compassionate listening. And I'll tell you, compassionate listening, we'll get into it later, but compassionate listening is like this. When my first wife died, one of the things that would happen is they would say to me, oh, Dr. Pruden, I'm so sorry that your wife died. And then they'll say, how are you doing? I'll give them the response. And quickly in the conversation, oh, when my brother died, oh, when my father died. And I realized it stopped being about me and it was about them. And I would listen, but I realized the compassionate listening is not one where you tell your story. It's not can you top this time? If you're listening with empathy, if you're listening compassionately, listen. Ask questions to get clarity, but it's not about telling your story. It's about listening to somebody else's story. Modeling, there's a whole stuff on modeling. We'll talk about that. Reframing, saying thank you. It's so easy to say, I love you, and our loved ones hear that from us all the time. But sometimes they'd rather hear, thank you. Thank you for what they've done, because they do a lot. Being present, we'll talk about that. Avoid judging. It shows up there twice by mistake, but I'm going to pretend it wasn't a mistake. Judging is something that we do, and it eats up a lot of our understanding about what's going on. And maybe I'll say these things now. Judging. There were times a 3-year-old child hit by a car, killed. I'm talking to the family. And in my head, and I'm being compassionate and I'm talking to them, but in my head, I'm thinking, what on earth was happening that you allowed a 3-year-old to go out in the street and get hit by a car? And then some more of the family members came in, and I heard the story where the 3-year-old was in the care of an 18-year-old female, and they were walking down the street. Mom came home, parked the car across the street. The 3-year-old broke free and ran out into the street. But I judged, and I didn't have enough information. If you watch that takeover of the Capitol, you watch this guy, Eugene Goodman, the Capitol police officer, and you see the video of him waving a baton at the crowd. And in my head, I'm thinking, you got to hit somebody with that baton because I'm judging. He's not doing his job right. And then the compassion in me says, well, maybe if he hit one of those people with the baton, he would be dead like his fellow officer, judging again. So maybe he's doing that. Now I'm pretending to be compassionate. But then you learn that not only is he protecting the senators and congressmen by leading people away from that group, but he's leading them up the steps where he has reinforcements. So I did a whole lot of judging, and I went through a whole lot of stuff, and I didn't have the facts. We rarely have enough facts in most of the things we do in this world to make valid judgments. So get it out of your book of things to do. You don't have to judge. There's no reason to do a judge. It's not getting in the way of what your primary goal is, which is to be a force of good. Love, love, love. Love's the answer. Detachment. It's tied with compassion and intention. Redefining your goal. It helps for you and it helps for those around you. And again, you see compassion. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a leadership talk. So let's talk about modeling. Next slide. So here are a lot of quotes about modeling. I was again doing that research on childhood responses, and they said, how are children going to behave in response to a disaster? And the answer is, if you want to know how a child is going to behave, look at their parents and watch how they behave, because we are the models. And just like parents are the models for their children, people in leadership positions are models for their followers. So courage isn't contagious, and so is fear. That's Lombardi said that, Aguilar said that, 500 people probably said that. Michael Jackson said, I'm talking to the man in the mirror. And the other thing, which is critical, is you are not the only one who suffers from your bad attitude. If you think that's not true, just imagine that you're going into a shift with your favorite charge nurse, and you found out that they had called in sick for the day, and now working in charge was Nurse Cratchit. Right. How does that make you feel? That's because people's attitudes and behavior is contagious. So one of the things you have to do is model the behavior you want people to see. There are these things called mirror neurons. People are herd animals. They will behave. If you smile at a child and you want to feed them and you smile and open your mouth, they open their mouth and you just shove the food in. It doesn't work all the time, but mirror neurons are a critical piece. Next slide. William James, bear with me on this one. He is considered the father of American psychology. And just to make sure that you all are hearing this, I'm going to read it for you. Action seems to follow feeling, but really action and feeling go together. And by regulating the action, which is under the more direct control of the will, we can indirectly regulate the feeling, which is not under the control of the will. Emotions are hard to control. Thus, the sovereign voluntary path to cheerfulness, if our spontaneous cheerfulness is lost, is to sit up cheerfully, to look around cheerfully, and to act and speak as if cheerfulness were already here. If such conduct does not make you soon feel cheerful, nothing else on that occasion can. So to feel brave, act as if we were brave. Use all our will to that end, and a courage fit will very likely replace the fit of fear. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm going to have to stop you right there. That was more bullshit than I could handle. I know. But in essence, what he was saying is fake it till you make it. So William James said it in 500 words. We say it to each other all the time. Fake it till you make it. And it's a good thing to do. So let's go to the next one. Holy crap, I'm Batman. We are not actually superheroes, but we do put ourselves at risk in the services of others. And that is what, not superheroes, but that is what heroes do. And before I go any further, I want to apologize to my colleagues at St. Joe's for what happened during the first surge of COVID. I had envisioned myself as being the one to solve the problem, come up with protocols, secure personal protective equipment, and define how to use it. I was going to be in the front lines. And after the H1N1 pandemic, I worked with the NJ-ACEP to develop a pandemic plan. It was distributed to the 82 hospitals at that time. And instead of being right there in the front, I'm down and out for the count. Now, some of you guys are saying, don't be ridiculous, you survived. You can't be expected to do what you just can't do. You were doing all you could to survive. You didn't make the choice to get sick. And I thank you for all those good thoughts. They ring true, but in the back of my head still is that sense of guilt. And that is how I imagine we all are, driven professionals, expecting to be in the game and on top of it, giving 100% all the time. My apology is sincere, but I also use it to make a point. It wasn't a choice I made to be sick instead of working. I imagine my colleagues will and do forgive me. And I imagine many would say, Pruden, there's nothing to forgive. You're only inhuman. You're only human. And that's the point. We are all only human. And if you will forgive me my shortcomings, then you have to forgive yourself what you perceive as your shortcomings. And if you were paying attention, you just saw the potential for use for one of those tools: forgiveness, self-talk, not being too harsh on oneself. Okay, so let's look at the tools. One of my favorite tools is basic pH. There's this guy named Mooley who was looking at how children who are resilient get through whatever the distress was. And a group called Natal, this is from Israel, one of their leaders was the equivalent of a colonel in the Navy SEALs, Yotam Dagan. And they broke down training and getting people through rough times into these 5, 6 things. And the mnemonic works well for me. For children and for other people under stress, B, bait the beliefs. Whatever your belief is it vegan? Is it vegan? Is it witchcraft? Is it Roman Catholicism? Is it Zen? Whatever your belief is, it should help sustain you, and you should dwell in it, bathe in it, support it, because that will get you through. In fact, your belief is probably one of the things that help you develop your core values, where your moral injuries may or may not come from. So consider your beliefs, your affect, how you behave, how you look to the world is not only an impact on you, but it's an impact on others. If you see the world is bad, then the world is bad. If you're a policeman and everybody is a potential perpetrator, then the world is full of perpetrators, and you may eat your gun as a result of that behavior and that belief. S is for your social group. Whenever you say we, you're talking about your social group. It can be your family, it can be your colleagues, it can be your bowling team. And whenever you say we, this is your social group, so supportive. Reach out to them when they're in need, or when you perceive there's a need, or when you haven't talked to them in a while, and let them support you. The I is for your imagination. What do you play? How do you play? Do you sing? Do you dance? Do you play the guitar? Do you do art? Do you do music? Do you play games? What is it that you do for your imagination? Support those. Maybe in that scheduled downtime, you can get involved in some of those things. The C is for cognition. It is problem solving, looking at things not as a challenge, not as but a bad thing, but as an opportunity. Early in my career in emergency medicine, they did a study looking at how physicians look at certain things they encounter. Drunk, the next drunk, the asthmatic that is still smoking cigarettes. And they found those who looked at it as an oh no, here's another one, fell out of emergency medicine practice relatively quickly. And those who looked at it as a challenge, well, let me see what I can do this time, survive much longer. So what your attitude is not hurting the person you're dealing with as much as it is hurting you. And your problem-solving skills are critical in keeping you moving forward. Physical health, maintain physical health. And that's a hard thing to do in the time of COVID. Speaking of what is your goal, that came up next. Okay, what is your goal? Well, goal is to be to be a superhero, although we're not really Batman or Wonder Woman, but we are a force for good. So that's what we're doing. So let's go to the next slide. Reframing. Reframing is a way of looking at things differently. I did that reframing when I talked to, well, let's try this one. Imagine you're on an airplane, flying 500 miles, you're flying from California to New Jersey. Your flight is going to be 5 hours, and in front of you is a 4-year-old kid who's up and down and up and down and throwing his food at you and running and screaming down the aisle. And with him is a 30-year-old woman who is doing nothing. What are your thoughts? Well, thoughts can range from well, why isn't that woman doing her job? Or, oh, I'm lucky that isn't my child. Or maybe the child is autistic. Or why didn't they give that child some Benadryl? And if you're thinking hard thoughts like she should be doing her job, somebody stop that child. Yeah, you get a little acid indigestion, your heartbeat goes a little faster, and stuff like that. If you're thinking compassionate, oh, that poor woman, or that poor child, then you have no physical effects. And in the meantime, you don't have any information. You don't have any information at all. Like, suppose I told you that that woman is flying back from her sister's funeral, and that 4-year-old child is her sister's child. Does that change your consideration? Well, you had a whole storyline going forward without adequate information, and you painted a horrible world, or you could paint a more compassionate world. You are painting the picture of the world you live in. Paint good pictures. I'm asking you to be an artist. Reframe it. I always tell my wife, listen, if you can think of what I'm saying as either being bad or good, I meant the good thing. Okay, it doesn't always work, but I try it anyway. So reframing, living the dream. So I walk by at work and somebody says, hey, Pruden, how you doing? And I say, I'm living the dream. And you'll get comments, oh man, I wish I were in your suit and stuff like that. And then I give them their 6 questions. They don't even talk to me anymore. Question number 1, do you have as much as you need to eat? Do you have a place to go to keep you out of the cold or the warmth? Or too much hot? Is your health okay? Is your brain working? Do you at least once a month get to do something you're passionate about? Is there some living creature on this earth that loves you? I would imagine that most of you answered yes to every single one of those questions, when 95% of the people on this earth would answer no to 1, 2, or 3 of these questions. And here we are answering yes to other questions. And the question I have for you is, what do you need? What do you need? Most of the things that we are dealing with are first world problems here, guys. First world problems. William James, again, the father of American psychology, spoke a little shorter here, and he said the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. We get to decide what we put in our heads. You want a happy life? Put happy things in your head. I'm not saying go la-la, but don't dwell on things that you're not going to be able to change. And if you're not happy with it and you have the power to change it, change it. Otherwise, you're just wasting your energy. You've heard the story of 2 wolves. It goes, a Native American is walking along the bluffs with his grandson, and they look down in the valley and they see a pack of wolves. So he turns to his grandson and says, running bear, that's bad. Okay. There are 2 wolves inside of us fighting for control. One represents greed, anger, selfishness, deceit, doubt, egotism, rudeness, and hate. And the other wolf represents hope, helpfulness, love, honesty, compassion, politeness, and sharing. And the grandson looked up to his grandpa and said, "Which one wins, Grandpa?" And he said, "The one you feed." Which wolf are you feeding? Okay, it's not all la-la about reframing. There, you don't have to read all that. But what happened was in World War II, planes were coming back after their raid, and they were looking at the bullet holes in the airplanes, and they were saying, what we're going to do is reinforce the areas of the planes that had the most bullet holes to keep our pilots and our equipment safe. And then somebody else said, you guys are seeing the airplanes that are coming back. So no matter how many bullet holes you see, these planes have survived. Maybe you should be putting reinforcement in the places where you don't see the bullet holes, because when those planes get bullet holes in those places, they don't come back. So it's reframing gives you a different way to look at it. Einstein said something about you'll never solve a problem if you attack it with the same mindset that in which the problem developed. You gotta look at things different ways. So reframing is a good way to do it. Let's talk about judgment. I told you already about the child that was hit by a car and killed. I told you about Eugene Goodman climbing up the hill. There was one case. It was a pretty horrible case. We had a 24-year-old gunshot wound to the chest, died. The bullet entered right side of his chest, blew the heart open, and he was dead. And one of our doctors, Dr. Boulos, who would do a heart transplant in the ER if you gave him the stuff, he had the chest had been open, and it was showing the residents how to, they talk about Foley catheters to stop the bleeding. He said that doesn't work. He said if you have to close the heart, use the pericardium, just don't use the muscles because the suture will tear through the pericardium. He was giving them the full story, and I loved it. And then I walked through the ER, and I was walking past bed 23, where the police were sitting with the person they thought to be the perpetrator. And I heard him say, he's about a 23-year-old guy, and I heard him say, I just want to go home. And I had my own judging thoughts. Yeah, okay, it might be a long time before you go home. Then it turns out that the guy who had been killed, he didn't shoot him. That was his best friend, who was now dead. And the guy who did the shooting, and he accidentally had a shot in his leg, the guy I'm looking at. The guy who did the shooting happened to be his cousin. So now not only is his best friend dead, and not only is his cousin probably going away for a long time, he has to deal with us walking around his room, looking at him like he's the shooter. We waste way too much time judging other people when we don't know the whole story. It's a waste of time. Do your job, don't judge. I love this line. My stepdaughter has this up in her room. It says, do not judge my story by the chapter you walked in on. And if you find yourself judging, you might want to consider walking a mile in the shoes of the person you're judging. And then if you find that you still cannot see it from their point of view, you're a mile away and you have their shoes. Next slide. All right, I can't see your faces, so I don't know if you heard that one or not. So anyway, gratitude. Gratitude is critical. We're emergency physicians. We know that life changes on a moment's notice, And so every minute we have is a gift. And if we're not smart enough to understand the gift we're enjoying with every breath we take, then we're not paying attention. Never let the things you want make you forget the things you have. Marcus Aurelius, a famous general said, he has a lot of great quotes. You should check them out. But he says, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. And you get it day after day after day. And don't blow it away. It's a marvelous gift. And the other side of this gratitude is saying thank you. Another William James quote is, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. So when that loved one has done something for you, don't take it for granted. When somebody, it's easy to say I love you and it's important to say it, but saying I thank you may be as important. Intention. I could tell you a lot of stories about intention, but if you don't know, you know intention, you may not have characterized it as a tool, but you know intention. You could not have gotten through medical school without intention. You could have not have gotten through college without intention. You could not have climbed the hills you have climbed without intention. Merrick Garland is presently being considered for the position of Attorney General of the United States. He's a Harvard-trained lawyer. Don't get me going on lawyers. By the way, you know what you call it when you have 20 lawyers floating face down in the river? You call it a good start. How do you keep a lawyer from drowning? You take your foot off his head. Anyway, I'm going to stop. Anyway, he is a Harvard-trained lawyer, and he's the one who investigated the Oklahoma City bombing and got Timothy McVeigh convicted. And they were doing the Senate hearing, and in an impassioned telling of how he wanted to repay the United States for giving refuge and protection for his family who escaped Nazi Germany. He choked up and he said, I want to give my highest, best use of my own set of skills. That's looking at his goal, and that's voicing his intention. And I dare say we do that every single day when we go to work. The sense that we are going to commit the force of our energy to doing that specific goal. Okay, stay where you are. And it's true, your intention is a powerful thing. Henry Ford said, if you think you can do it, or if you think you can't do it, you're right on either count. Michael Jordan did this. I missed more than 9,000 shots. I lost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. He did what he had to do. He didn't let failure stop him, and I'm sure many of you have run against that. Somebody once asked Wayne Gretzky, how many times has he missed the shot? And he said, I missed 100% of the shots I did not take. Not going to give up my shot, guys. Take that shot. Japanese proverb is fall down 7, get up 8. It's Joshua Graham said, I think it was Joshua Graham said, I survived because the fire inside of me burned brighter than the fire around me. And then I said, who the hell is Joshua Graham? And it turns out it's some game. This is a made up game, but it's a good line. I survived because the fire inside of me burned brighter than the fire around me. Detachment. I talked to you about tactical detachment, but a detachment is letting it go, guys. There are so many things in this world that we cannot control, and roiling about it inside doesn't change it. You know what I mean? You have to practice intention, but you also have to let go things of those things that you're not going to change. Even if you want something to happen, sometimes you have to let it go. And again, we go to William James. He's a bright guy. Acceptance of what has happened is the first step to overcoming the consequences of any misfortune. My wife hates it when I say it, but the line is, it is what it is. That's what he's saying. It is what it is. Let go of the things you can't change and focus on the things you can. Einstein alluded to it in a different way when he said, weak people revenge, strong people forgive, intelligent people ignore. Let it go. When some psych patient calls you an MF, so what? In fact, the EMT teams used to call me Zip when I was a little while ago. They used to call me Zip, and the reason they called me Zip was because I told them the story of a woman, a patient with dementia, who was I was an intern, and she said she wanted to go home. I said, ma'am, if you can tell me where you live, we can let you go home. And she said, well, I take the bus. And I said, ma'am, I can't let you go. And she said, you zipper-headed motherfucker. And so they kept calling me Zip. But the truth is, if I couldn't detach, then I would take umbrage. I don't care. That's her problem. It's not mine. You got to let go. Another way of looking at it, no matter where you go, there you are. Confucius said that. Next one. Now we have to look at detachment versus intention. You have to decide when you're going to be intent and whether you're going to detach. Now imagine thinking of that tattoo, that one you have in your hand, and getting that tattoo that you're getting on your back. This is a time for, yeah, you can't be detached from that. You got to get back into the game and go. I don't know what you're going to do, but there's some time when you have to work with that. William James, okay, let's see, detachment. So I don't know what your beliefs are, but the serenity prayer is a great belief. If you look at the three words, serenity, courage, and wisdom. Serenity is that detachment, that acceptance of things as they are. Courage is the will and the intention to do what you need to do in spite of the challenges that you meet. And wisdom. What is wisdom? It's the sound use of knowledge tempered by experience. Okay, next slide. Love. You know what love is. You know what love is. And when that clap out you saw, Hoda was playing it on, Hoda and Kathy Lee Griffith were playing it on their show. And Hoda said, that clap out, that's what love looks like. That's what love looks like. Compassion, you know what it is, but I'll give you a visual example of compassion. Something happened in the kitchen and I love you so much. That's when you don't give that dog a hard time, you're showing compassion. Empathy. Empathy is being able to feel the other person's pain. It's not just saying, it's not simply, oh, I'm so sorry. It's feeling them in a way that they know you are with them. Next slide. And empathetic listening is probably the best we can do for each other. Peer-to-peer listening about how bad our colleague's day was. It's not a one-upsmanship. It's let me listen and help them through this. Because helping them through this is going to be the most effective way we can blunt the effect of that moral injury. Ritual. Ritual is important. There are so many different, let's go to the next slide. And one critical kind of ritual, there are rituals of saying your prayers, or there are rituals of every day I brush my teeth, I brush them a certain way. But there are short-term rituals like taking a deep breath and counting to 10 before you speak. In anger, that's a very critical, important ritual. There are long-term rituals like how do you change your clothes when you go home from a COVID infested emergency department? You know, you can take your shoes off, you can take your scrubs off, you can put them in a pile by the washing machine, you can go into the shower. And if you do that thoughtfully and consistently, you can make that transition from the COVID and the death and all of the stuff you're dealing with at home in the emergency department to that place of love and that new environment where you are blessed by so many of those things that in the first world you may not be paying attention to: your family, your loved ones, your book, your music. So you may want to develop these transition rituals. Another thing to think of is there's no such thing as a bad day. They're just bad moments that we choose to take with us all day long. So there's that deep breath ritual when somebody has called you a bad name. There's that long-term ritual. And there's that William James thing about changing your own mind. If you choose to dwell on what you experience, then that's your mind making the decision to live in the bad times. Presence. If someone asks you how much it cost you, many of you would think in terms of wallets and credit cards and bank account. But in truth, the most valuable thing we have is our time and our energy. And if we are being someplace, but paying attention, we're texting on our phones, or we're looking at the email, and we're not there with the people we are there with, we are wasting valuable what? It isn't money that values. It's not money that we're wasting. It's our time and our energy. So go to the next slide. Presence and mindfulness are pretty much the same thing. And mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, to the unfolding of experience moment to moment. Next slide. Now there's a guy named Garland has posited that a mindful state may facilitate disengagement from an initial appraisal of a stressor into a metacognitive state, whereby thoughts about the stressor are appraised with greater perspective and less habitual emotion-laden response. In this way, the individual is able to decenter from an experience in a way that enables a more balanced appraisal of events to occur. And that's time for that bear again, I know. Next slide. It's not about me. So it's easy. You guys already know this. Let's go to the next slide. Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Einstein said, go to the next slide. Einstein said, only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. Next slide. King said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Next slide. Albert Schweitzer, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found a way to serve.
Dr. Pruden, this is Dr. Baker. I just want to let you know we're coming up near the end of the hour.
Okay.
It's about a few minutes left. It's
all right. So go to the next slide. Humor. All right, I hear you. Next time a stranger talks to you, when you're all alone, just look at them shocked and whispered, can you see me? Next slide. We'll go faster. Sex is like air. It's not really that important until you're not getting any. Next slide. Everyone go back. It's a blowjob. I know. Okay, go back. Next slide. All right, everybody calm down. Next slide. So take off. Know your goal, reframe, intention, detachment, ritual, don't judge, laugh, be grateful. And now I'm going to go cut away from the slides because I want to tell you something. Many of you got into this business to be a force for good, to be Batman, to be the hero. And yeah, the money's pretty good and the prestige is not bad either, but I would dare say that as a young person, you wanted to help people. So I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking to heroes. There was a movie with Kevin Costner and Ashton Kutcher. Costner was the guardian, the hero, and he'd saved everybody in air sea rescue. And Kushner was a young upstart. He's going to break all of Costner's record. He kept asking him, how many lives have you saved? How many lives have you saved? And he broke all of Costner's records in the pool, and he said it. And finally, he confronted him and said, how many? Tell me what the number is. And Costner said, 22. He said, you've been doing this for 30 years. You saved more than 22 lives. And he said, no, 22 is a number that I have lost. And the truth is, that's what we do. We focus on the ones that have died. And it is important to be aware of the ones who died. If we can learn from them, learn from them. But don't let it consume us because because even though we focus on the ones that we died, every day we're doing a piece, a little small piece, and to do something to do good. So reframe it. Don't dwell on those lives you could not wrench from the arms of death, but those lives that through your education, your training, your compassion, and persistence, you were able to turn around. Those lives, by some great or simple thing you did, you were able to sustain, to turn around, to save, like mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pruden. In our chat room, there are just so many people who remark about how you have been a great role model to them during their careers. And they're very happy that you're looking well and healthy and appreciate the motivational speech that you just gave. Some questions I just had just in listening to what you mentioned. I wondered, was there any particular tool that as you were dealing with COVID personally that you had to develop that you didn't have already, and something that you actually had to learn or that was a challenge for you in order to deal with COVID?
I'll tell you, there was a lot of insight, and I'm full of insights, but probably the most important one that stuck with me was this piece about love. You know, as an emergency physician and I'm high on the pedestal, I have been giving and giving and giving, and somebody needs this, I'll give. Somebody needs this, I will give. I am the guy. I will give this. And when I came out of the hospital and I heard Hoda say, that's what love looks like, it dawned on me, you know, here I am, I can't even walk. I can't even turn over in bed. I can't even wipe myself. And people have been doing that for me and they have turned it around. And she said, this is what love is like. And it dawned on me, this is a cycle. It's not just giving, it's being prepared to receive. And that's the take home, the exchange from one human being to the other of whatever we can share with each other in this life is the take home, the insight that I got from that illness.
Thank you again for being our inaugural speaker. You definitely gave a lot of insight, and it shows in your character, in your descriptions of what you've given us, why you're so resilient. And I hope that each and every one of us is able to learn from your insights and increase our resiliency as we continue to deal with the COVID pandemic and as we just continue throughout life, because you've shared a lot of things that are useful inside the emergency department and outside the emergency department.
Thank you very much for having me speak. You guys have a good day. If you can't help it, it's going to be a good day.
It'll be a good day, right? We have to reframe it. So we will all have a good day, and we hope that you can join us for our next session that will take place on April 28th. The link is in the chat box, and Dr. Alfred Sacchetti will be talking about doing research from a community setting. And we hope that all of these sessions that we have are able to help you throughout your career and help develop leadership skills in different facets of your emergency medicine career. Thank you, everyone.